welcome. I'm not sure if Mike's here yet,
I
but
am.
hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Colorado's now on lockdown, so
Welcome to the club.
um, what's that?
Welcome to the club.
That's what everybody says. It's
Yeah.
it's very nice. I discovered this new restaurant. You have to like gather all the ingredients and then make the food yourself. It's called The Kitchen.
What?
I have no clue how it stays in business at all. That place is horrible. Um, but I'm gonna have to keep going there because it's really the only thing open. So, um, so welcome, Mike, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike is the host of CU Broadcast. I also like to welcome our sponsors, Doug Burke from Credit Service Network, who's been gracious enough to sponsor this. Um, so thank you, Doug, for being on today, and a whole lot of folks. So
Absolutely.
we'll get quickly and go through it. I know a lot of people have been on this already, but there are new people, so I just want to go over the format. We've limited the registration to 20 people. We do that so everyone can get a chance to talk. After a quick introduction, and I'll try to be as fast as I can, we are going to introduce each credit union one by one. And the way we've been doing it lately is we have you sign into the chat, which I'll show you where that is. So I'm not really worried about alphabetical order anymore. I probably take that out of the slides when we get a chance. If you feel compelled by someone and something they say, maybe they have something you want to hear more about, we would love you to reach out directly to them in the chat, get their contact information, and get more collaboration. If there's something we think should be a broader topic, then Mike would take that on and interview that person or several people or whatever it takes, and then put that on the CU broadcast piece.
Would love it.
If there's something that you think everyone should know in an answer to a question, don't hesitate to post that to the Everyone chat channel. These town halls are recorded. They're published on CU Broadcast and on the big website, along with the chat transcript. So there are actually a bunch of them out there already on the website that you can go watch if you haven't been part of these. So we'll try, as hard as we can not to repeat things. And then the chat transcripts out there. But also, if you are feeling as though there's something you don't want to share that's proprietary that might hit a broader audience, keep that in mind. So here are the things we've learned in the past few weeks. Tracking direct deposit interruptions. Most credit unions have updated their PTO policies. Some CUs have reported large withdrawals of cash. I don't know if that's still going on. I'd love to hear about that. Many CUs are allowing people to break CDs, relaxing Reg D. Relief loans, which I think we're going to have some discussion from Doug a little bit. There's been quite a few people, or quite a lot of news and what's going through. So I think it'll be interesting to have more discussion around that. Unions have closed their lobbies, so that's another big one. And some people don't have lobbies to close, so that's a problem. And then we also have separating employees and cross training was one that came up. Skip a pay program. Night drop box was a really cool idea. Use that, and people just have deposits and want to put them in an envelope. Maybe you don't have drive ups. Advising the members to wipe down the ATMs before they use them. Make sure you tell co-op what you're doing with your branches. That's a big one. No shared food in the credit unions. Finding remote workers has been difficult, and we're about to partner with OGO today to try to help people with that, and resources that go with remote workers like laptops and VPNs. Some common challenges, remote usage for exclusive platforms like the FedLine. I mentioned branches without drive-throughs, obviously ill members, sick employees. Digital services are being overwhelmed. We're starting to hear that because more and more people are using them. Jim Moreau posted something today that said banking's changed forever. Now that some of these folks who wouldn't go digital have been forced to, they may not come back to the physical stuff. So I thought that was an interesting piece. You should check that out. His Twitter account has that. Security concerns. We're seeing an upgrade of attacks on people. Kevin Wright from Addition Credit Union mentioned that this week. As well as physical wearing masks into places, lack of cleaning supplies, and concerns around regulations, your annual meetings, your board meetings, those sorts of things, common issues amongst everyone. So I'm going to let Doug brought this to my attention today, so I'm going to let him speak to this a little bit. Doug, you there?
I am. Okay, so one of the things that CU Service Network offers is we provide regulatory compliance services to a number of credit unions around the country. And we produce a monthly newsletter. And the town hall meetings have been great with all sorts of ideas about skip-a-pay or, letting people deferring fees and interest rates and all this other type stuff. But the rubber hits the road when you say, well, we got an idea, but what do we actually have to, how do we implement it? And so typically we produce a monthly news and compliance update to our clients only, and we've opened it up to anybody. But basically what you will see in there is what are the regulatory issues, what's the how-tos with some of that type of stuff. And that list continues to grow. So it's out on a blog out there, and we'll continue to update as we address, new issues. So as an example, this morning, we were talking about repossessed vehicles and, can people do it? Can they not do it? And if you do it, what's the trigger versus all these other things, with skip-a-pay and, members have the ability to kind of combine some of these things. And is that going to be allowed? And if it is allowed, how do you regulatorily deal with that? So we wanted to just share this resource with everybody, and hopefully you can make good use of that. So John, where can they get access to this?
So we will happily get it up on our website in the same town hall place where they signed up for this.
Okay,
so
great.
If Nate will get it over to Elliot, we'll make sure it's there.
Okay, sounds good. The other thing that came up this morning, and I put out on the chat, and we're working on it, and I'll try to make available as well, is a hold harmless agreement, because members are wanting so much cash. And we have a client who has a member who wants to withdraw $100,000 in cash. And people, there's just making sure it can happen. But the credit union wants a hold harmless agreement, say, well, once you walk out that door, we can't be held liable what happens to you. And so we're going down that path to create, a document along those lines as well that we'll be willing to share. So, John, back to you.
Now I got to unmute. Thank you so much, Doug. So I think those are excellent points, and we'll make sure all that's out there, and we'll have a link to this the article as well. So we'll push that out. We're going to have our first credit union speak, which is going to be Tom. But before Tom speaks, I probably should talk about this. So I have a 3D printer here. I've been doing some robotics work in the space of avatars. Some of you may have been at XFI and saw Dr. Harry Clore speaking. I was fortunate enough that he invited me to join his team, and just to try to learn a little bit about what's going on with that. And as a result of that, I have a 3D printer here. I learned just recently from Elliot Cotto, who's our Chief Creative Officer. He has some family that are nurses, and they were in desperate need of what they call PPE, which is the face shields and the face masks. And he happened to be talking to me about it, and I was looking online, and you could print them. So I printed some, and I sent them to him. Well, last night I was up super late because I joined a group to online print them, and was up late, and I just randomly tweeted that, I was up late, printing these masks, and the thing has gone viral. So if you get a chance, you want to check out my Twitter, but maybe some of your credit unions bought some of these, just to experiment with them in the tech space. If you have them, let me know, and maybe you can also help too. I can put you in touch. There's people all across the country who are, you may only have one. You may think, wow, I can only print like 6 a day, but you'd be surprised how that might help. So reach out to me if that's what you're interested in, and we'll go from there. So Tom, unmute and talk to us. I'm worried about New York. You're in the middle of it. I worry about you and everyone out there. So give us the latest. And New Jersey, and New Jersey. I know you're in New Jersey, so.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. You hear me now?
I do hear you.
Great, great. Yeah, so it's very interesting here. Just anecdotally for you, my CFO, who had been with me for a number of years, left us and went to another credit union. She's now working in New York. Her first day was this past Monday. And I spoke with her Monday night, and she was the only one in her train car on New Jersey Transit commuting into New York City on Monday morning. Normally, there's 145,000 people that commute from New Jersey alone into New York City, let alone New York State, Connecticut, and Long Island. And Kirk can attest to what happens out there. But she was the only one in this major line between New Jersey and New York for about an hour's ride.
That's the one that goes under the Hudson, right? Or
yes, it's one of them that goes under the Hudson. Yeah, so that gives you a basic sense of what has happened in New York City, which is on a complete lockdown. We're even talking now about closing parks to keep people at safe distances and to resolve this. They're turning the Jacob Javits Convention Center, which is on the Hudson River. They're going to turn that into a field hospital. And this place, if you haven't been to the Javits, it's a massive, massive convention center. They do boat shows. They bring full-size yachts into this building. And car shows. It's a huge, huge facility. And then also on Monday, they're going to get the USN Comfort, the Navy's ship, to come in with further beds. They're just, it's devastating. The cases, New York has, I think, still the second largest number of cases in the country, in the world. The US is now number 1, but I think New York is number 2 behind the country. So business is essentially stopped in this area. Lockdown, New York's on a lockdown. One of the issues that's dear to our hearts are the taxi medallions, the taxi drivers in New York. They are not working. We monitor their revenues, and there's just nothing coming in, nothing whatsoever. So it's hopefully it's not a precursor to the nation, but whatever you're experiencing in mid-America, what we might refer to as flyover country on the coast, we're seeing it on the east and the west, and it's just devastating. And no one knows. Two final points on it. No one knows how long it's going to last, which is really a difficult situation, nor how severe it's going to be. And then it's we're looking at this thing ramping up in the fall, from what they're saying as well, once we get back into cold weather. If you go to, you talk about the spread of the disease and all, if you go to flightaware.com, the home screen of a site, our original sponsor was the FAA, so air travel is near and dear to our heart. So if you go to that site, it'll bring up a map of the United States. You will be blown away by the sheer quantity of airplanes that are still in the sky. Now, the numbers are down, but when you look at the flights going across the country and then coming into and out of the country, with an untrained eye, you would look at this and think it's air travel as normal. There are so many flights that are still, it's a ridiculous number of flights that are in the air. I would have thought that that there would be barely a plane in the sky, that air travel would be dramatically reduced. And we've heard stories about how they reduced flights. But this virus is still traveling across the country. I question how quickly or how easily this will be able to be resolved going forward. And I don't know if you've seen this we talked about earlier about ATMs and drive-up depositories. But in the Postal Service, the mailboxes, the blue mailboxes on the corners and in our office parking lot, they've now put a slot. You don't pull a handle to put your mail into the mailbox. There's just a steel, it's all closed up, and there's a little slot that you can put about 2 envelopes in. So you don't even have to touch the mailbox to give them mail. And when you start talking about a drive-up ATM or night depository, those are things that are going to need to be cleaned more or less constantly if you want to try to keep your people and your members safe. So even the post office has taken this drastic measure with the post boxes. I was talking to a couple of credit union colleagues recently and earlier today, and we're now considering how this is going to change the nature of work and, of course, commerce Aspire we're about 130 million in assets, but we are a fully digital credit union. We have one small member service center that we close that on, whenever we have a need. Our members are all digitally trained. We have a lot of digital natives, younger members now. And so for us, it was life goes on. The only thing we did is we made sure all our people could work from home, but our members are remote and digitally oriented for the credit union. So we haven't had that impact of our call center is as busy as it has ever been, but we haven't had to deal with a shift from branch and retail environment to there's the map, to a digital membership. Our members use remote deposit capture. They use bill pay. So we've been fortunate in that regard. But if you follow what's happening, going back to my original point, if you go back and follow what's happening in New York, it gives you a sense of what could be happening in other parts of the country if this is not stopped. And there's that map, and it is thinner than normal, but it's still, for me, that's still a lot of air. That's a lot of planes in the sky.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. So these are all the reason all these planes are here is because this site, you put up your own antenna and then you feed them. And I actually have my own antenna and I feed them. This is mine for where I live. You can see that's a whole bunch right there. So, and I'm actually ranked in their website because I've been doing it for a while. But yeah, you're right. I like to know what's over the top of me, like these sorts of things.
Right.
But yeah, I'll share this link in the main website so you guys can see it.
Yeah, I would have.
Hey, John.
Hey,
John, it's Kirk. Can I add just two personal comments going on?
Of course.
And to give a sense of the personal issues that Tom's talking about, I have a 55-year-old friend that is gravely ill, great health, completely fine before this, non-smoker, no issues along those lines. And so the people that continue to think that it's just an older issue, if older is over 40 or 50, we're now in a situation in New York, not completely dissimilar than 9/11, where we're all starting to know somebody that's gravely ill or has lost an elderly relative to this. This is serious stuff. And the lack of containment of it. If you look at the Johns Hopkins site, and if you looked at it over the last 2 weeks, you see a centralization of it around New York, and now you see it spread out, day by day, mile by mile, west and south and north. So that's just what's happening, and we're seeing it.
No, without a doubt. Well, thank you, Kirk. And Tom, thank you for the update. Tom, did you ever film that regulatory piece with Mike, or probably been busy?
We haven't done that yet. We still have to connect to do that.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you for
Look forward to it,
sharing.
Tom.
And if there are questions for Tom, I can tell you just from my own personal experience with him, if you reach out to him on the chat here, he will happily help. He's a great team player, and thank you for joining again today and giving us a, unfortunately, dire update, but an update.
You're welcome.
Are all your employees and your family okay?
Yes, knock on wood, everybody's healthy, and we've got 4 people working in the office now. We all have offices, and it's by choice. Everyone else is home, working from home.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tom. Jonathan, would you mind going next? I'll unmute you and I'll spotlight you. We'll just let you be on the screen. We don't have to worry about the slides because you look like you have a cool whiteboard behind you. And
oh yeah. Jonathan from Hudson Valley Credit Union here in Poughkeepsie, New York. So not too far away from the epicenter of this whole thing in New York City. It's interesting. We're seeing the infection rate start to pick up in our area. We've deployed, there's new testing sites being deployed around our immediate vicinity. So we've got our first, unfortunately, our first handful, I think 2 or 3 at this point, deaths from the virus in our county at this point. And so, it's becoming increasingly concerning. And we, as sort of to contrast the way, Tom's organization works, we are still and had been up until now a very branch-centric organization. We have a lot of members using digital channels, hundreds of thousands of members using digital channels, but we have just as many using our retail, sort of brick and mortar retail channels as well. Our lobbies are all closed at this point, and we are drive-up only in our location. So that is proving to be challenging for our members, but also it's proving to have some interesting staffing challenges now too. Certainly we want to preserve our staffing and want to keep them gainfully employed during all of this. So that's a new challenge as we've closed lobbies. And what we're starting to do is reallocate our branch staff from our 20+ branch network to assisting back office operations areas that need help. And honestly, we're taking this opportunity to leverage those staff to work through projects and a lot of cleanup projects that necessarily we hadn't been throwing a lot of staff at. So while we have the manpower, we're starting to utilize them more heavily to do those types of cleanup tasks that we might otherwise have not gotten to. So if there's a silver lining with those lobbies becoming closed, it's that we are able to keep those staff gainfully employed. We're not having to look at a lot of what other organizations in our areas are now doing, which are furloughing or laying off employees. And luckily, I think the credit union movement, at least in our area, has been fairly insulated from that so far, but a lot of our local businesses are doing that. And I think some of the other challenges we're facing, what's been interesting is as our remote workforce has gone, so we went from a workforce of, essentially, we only had maybe 50 people that worked remotely full-time, and we had about 150 or so users that had the capability to work remotely when they needed. So we ramped that up here very quickly to now over 400 remote users, and we have concurrently working at any given time 300+ remote users from our back office areas. So we've had to scale that up very quickly. So that was a challenge. And I think the other major challenge we're starting to see, and it's not something we have direct control over, but it's affecting our staff and our remote working staff in particular, is the fact that many of our staff that are now being forced to work remotely because we've essentially closed down our offices and even our back office operations center. I'm here today, but in my staff of 30 people that I normally have here, I now have 3 people on site with me. Everybody else is working remote, just to give you a sense of how many people have moved out of the building. And so one of the challenges we're seeing is that a lot of people don't have landline phones anymore. And the cellular networks in this area are starting to get very congested. And so it's actually starting to impact call quality. And when we have our, now a significant number of our call center staff, about 100 of our call center staff working remotely, that can impact member service. So that's been a interesting challenge to try and keep on top of. And then the other challenge for remote workers, not necessarily just voice quality, but internet connection, ISP congestion, especially on cable modem networks. As we have more and more staff working remotely, the cable modem networks are clogging up fast. And, especially in our area and a lot in New York at this point, they've shut down all the schools. And so you have everybody at home playing their video games and playing Fortnite or whatever they're doing,
right. Streaming
and clogging up that bandwidth.
Yeah.
So it's, managing ISP quality of service and managing voice quality of service is becoming one of our major challenges. One of the things we've had to do here as well is really ramp up our SIP trunk capacity to make sure that we can support the significant number of new calls coming in since our branches have closed their lobbies. So a lot of logistical management, a lot of capacity management going on. I also count ourselves fairly lucky in the grand scheme of things within New York, because things have been moving so fast, and that we had tools to allow a rapid migration of users to remote work without having to really spin up a large number of physical devices or laptops. We were able to allow people to securely work from home using their own devices, using their own phones, in a way that is very controlled and monitored. And if anybody on the call is having, significant issues trying to deploy remote users because you don't necessarily have a service yet, or you're trying to find physical laptops and you can't, there is a vendor out there. They go by the name of SecureLink. They have been immensely helpful to us. Their platform has allowed us to just push workers remotely faster than we could have imagined, and it's been extraordinarily helpful. Honestly, we were, I think, the first one that went to them and said, hey, we've got this new use case for your platform because of these remote workers that we need to push out. Normally, they use their platform for secure vendor access into your internal systems where you have managed service vendors working on your platforms, but we were able to adapt it for our staff for them to access systems securely and remotely. So again, if you're having any challenges with that, I would definitely suggest looking into the SecureLink platform. They've been an incredible partner with us through all of this. And so with that, I think that's the status from Poughkeepsie.
So I have a couple questions. Also, is this the website?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I put that in the link everyone if you're interested. And also, just because we're trying to, we're still figuring out what to do while other projects go dormant. We're going to be offering a little later a remote service worker security check. We're finding that a lot of people are wanting to run VDI or something, and they don't realize that the home network has been hit already. We've already had one case of it that we tracked down. So if you're interested in that, hit me or Melissa, and we'll set up something. I'm talking to Kirk Drake and Ogo about it today. Jonathan, a couple questions. One, last time we had a gentleman from your organization. He was telling us that staff can't even go between floors.
So our COO was on Tony Rohrmeyer was on one of the prior calls, and you're absolutely right. We have implemented very, very strict processes within our operations center. So just to give you an idea, we have 2 floors within our operations center. And the way we've done this, because we've really encouraged everybody that can to move remotely and work remotely, but for those of us that are still here, and it's pretty few and far between at this point, we have basically stopped all movement from staff between floors. So if you're on the top floor, you stay on the top floor. If you're on the bottom floor, you stay on the bottom floor. Mostly because of the spread of the virus in our area and the fact that it's becoming so much more common. We're trying to do everything to limit contact between staff that might not normally come in contact with each other, to try and prevent any significant amount of workforce disruption. So that is something we're doing. We've taken a pretty hard line on all of that. And our HR department has really been making sure everybody is remaining in compliance with those directives as time goes on.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Paul just mentioned the same thing. A couple other things just to ask here. Your staff that are having to travel to branches, did you guys have to write notes so they don't get pulled over?
So we did, and what we have advised our staff to do is our senior vice president of HR and our CEO provided all staff with a letter to carry with them in the event they do need to travel. We also advise staff to always have their badge, their picture identification on them at all times when they're traveling for work purposes. So far, we have not had any instances where anybody has been pulled over and asked for that type of identification, but we are all carrying it just in case at this point.
Yeah, my wife works for a Department of Defense contractor here, and you know, she's the administration or executive in the organization. Now that we're locked down in Colorado, we had to provide notes to all the DoD employees, or she did. One last thing, just an idea. On the bandwidth and congestion issues, do you have Silver Peak or Riverbed?
Excuse me. So we don't use those today. Actually, we have NetScalers in some of our branches. So we haven't, but we don't have those widespread. Honestly, from our corporate bandwidth perspective, we haven't seen really any issues. It's more of the last mile bandwidth issues from our to homes for staff working remotely.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is to put it on the VPN link. It would reduce the number of screens that are being sent to the home, because it
true, very true.
And we tested that. We saw some magic. Okay. So happy to help.
Okay, definitely worth it.
If we can help with that, I've already implemented it several times. So
okay, great.
And I think they'd be happy to send some. They're looking. You probably.
I'm sure they are.
But I do realize, yeah, it's not going to help on your side. It's more for theirs. If you can reduce the amount of what you're sending, because, you know, they're also having to deal with all the broadcast and everything else, and that's coming through. We've seen it work magic. So
okay.
If anybody's interested, these are products that do kind of QoS that basically, you know, if your people at a branch are complaining that they're slow or whatever, you pop this thing in. I call it the magic box, and boom, everything is better. So if someone sends a PDF to everybody at the credit union, instead of sending that same PDF, you know, that's 5 meg, you know, 20 times down to the branch to 20 different people, it'll send it once and duplicate it on the other side. Saves a lot of time and trouble, and it's very good. So, well, Jonathan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. We hope you and your family are safe. Are the Hudson Valley employees so far safe?
So far, so good. We have not had any confirmed illness of COVID-19 among staff. We do have some staff still in sort of self-isolation just because they've had other illnesses, and we're taking a very careful approach to that, but no confirmed cases. And you know, we're all crossing our fingers and really hoping that it continues to stay that way and everybody's safe. So thank you so much for that, and hopefully everybody else on here, as well as your family, John, are safe and sound as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking the time today. All right, so we're going to move on. If you have questions for Jonathan, known him a long time. He's another person who's always happy to help and be part of the solution. Can guarantee you, if you reach out, he will absolutely help you out. So, so let's go to Paul. Would you like to speak? I think he's unmuting.
We are in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got 16 branches. We've gone to lobby only, except for the one that does not have drive-through. And that one, there's no one nearby. So we are having to have folks in the lobby. We're trying to always schedule appointments, though, rather than let people come in.
Are you using any software for that?
We're just using normal Skype software
okay.
For items.
I didn't know if you had a scheduler. We heard of a credit union using something called Coconut to schedule the appointments through their phones.
No.
So. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And then we just put it on a regular old Outlook schedule. It's just the branch managers right now that are meeting with people. And we're also restricting movement between floors. I've been sent home, so I'm only allowed to come into the building on weekends when no one else is around. So, which makes things sometimes a bit challenging to get paperwork back and forth.
So as far as your employees, has is pretty much everyone sent home, or is it a certain amount? Like, how many employees do you have?
We've got 240. The branch folks are pretty much about half of them have been sent home, unable to work. We're going ahead and continuing to pay them. The back office folks, we've actually scattered between 3 different sites. For the most part, there are a few others that have been sent to branches that have offices where they can be isolated, so that we don't have any one team that could be affected at the same time.
Gotcha.
Our officers are rotating between having one in the office, in main office at all times, and the rest of the time they're either at a remote branch or home.
Makes sense. And has remote working software worked out well for you?
It's okay, not great. It took me a week and a half to get high-speed internet at home. The normal internet just was not sufficient. And of course, CenturyLink is just backed up for installations. CenturyLink's definition of they'll have it installed in the morning is by 3:30 at night, in the afternoon. But hey, whatever.
Yeah, no, I know how they work. That's interesting. One thought I just wrote down was, seems like in the future that for our planning, we need to know what our staff has as far as internet. And it sounds like that's something to start including in our planning for DR. So hadn't thought about that, and I'm appreciative of Tom and Jonathan sharing kind of what's to come. I was once in New York it was like May 12th, 2000. I think I just visited you, Tom, and my daughter was with me, and there was some sort of they locked down all of Times Square because someone had drove a bomb in the middle of there. And I was right there. I literally was almost leaning on the car because I'm smart that way. And the one thing I noticed was not only did the cellular go down, I couldn't get in touch with my wife who was freaking out, but the text stopped working too. The way I finally got in touch with her was I got a text to go through, and I went to one of those Times Square cameras, and because we were stuck there, they locked us all down and waved at her. So I guess that's something to consider. So it's interesting that you're kind of giving us what's to come should we see higher infection rates and those sorts of things in some of these bigger areas.
Yeah, bandwidth definitely becomes an issue.
Yeah, something to think about. Paul, on any word on New Mexico? Does it feel like you guys are not going to be going into a lockdown, given that Colorado has? I'm kind of expecting adjacent states to start following suit, but I don't know. You're still muted if you're speaking. Okay, well, we'll assume that that's possibly going to happen. Robert, Hammer, you want to go next?
Hi there. Yeah.
Hey, man.
I wasn't planning on saying much, but yeah, I'm just retired from my institution about a year ago, so I missed the actual day-to-day on this, but we did have Hurricane Harvey we had to deal with a while before that. I'm down in Southeast Texas in Beaumont.
Yeah, I was interested. Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, pretty much the same as everybody else. The branches are all shut down. The drive-ups, they all have drive-ups. They're all open. And
can you tell everybody which credit union you were with?
Oh yeah, this was Mobil Oil Federal Credit Union.
Yep, one of our clients.
Texas, we're about 860 million, and I believe around 11 branches right now. But they all have drive-ups, so they're all open for that. They all have at least one ATM, and so the ATMs are all up and operating. They also have a large call-in center. They can do both video and just if someone can just audio, they'll just do audio. And so they've got that fully staffed, and pretty much everybody is working from home as well. Those that need to self-quarantine, of course, are staying there. Very few people coming into the offices. Trying to think beyond that. Luckily, they've got a great mobile app, and the mobile app really helps a lot because people can deposit checks and do most anything else they need to do on the mobile app, if not on the online. And so all in all, they're in pretty good shape. And other than that, you know, they've had the same problem others have had with making sure they have enough cash on hand, because people do come in and you get one person comes in and wants 20 grand and you go, okay, well, we can do that. But then the next person walks in and wants 40 grand. And before you know it, all the money's going out. But they beefed up the ATMs to the max that they'll hold. And so far, not having any internet issues from people working at home. And that's good. That may have something to do with the infrastructure in our area due to the refineries might be a little more robust than it is in some other areas. And other than that, there's not anything special. They are paying their employees whether they're working or not through this whole period. And I think other than that, unless anyone had any particular questions, they are allowing some staff to stay away, partly because they want to have that staff available if the others become ill, but that hasn't been an issue in the area either. I think we got a total of 8 or 9, maybe 10 cases in the entire area, which is 5 counties and 1 death so far, who also had underlying medical issues. So it's pretty much like it is around the rest of the country here. In terms of movement, we got a stay-at-home order. They've been stiffening up every day. As of today, you can't gather at all. It was interesting. We had a little get-together last night, made sure we had 10 or less people. And if we were planning that for tonight, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because the police are out making sure you're not going anywhere other than the grocery store or the bank or something like that.
Well, yeah, I knew you guys had done the hurricane planning. It's great to hear that Mobil Oil is doing well, and even better to hear that you're retired. Sounds like you and your family are safe. So.
Oh yeah, me and the wife and the cat are doing just fine.
I don't know. The cats are up to something. This is a good time for the cats to get you. So that's my 2 cents.
Ours wants us to leave. She's just sick and tired of us being here, but that's too bad.
It is their house, their world. We just live in it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Robert.
Okay.
I appreciate your time. And if anybody has any questions for Robert, though he's retired, I can tell you he's a wealth of information, and I'm sure he'll answer anything he can. Aaron just answered my question. New Mexico is under a stay-at-home order. So good to know. I thought they were. I didn't know if they were on lockdown similar to what we are, but close. Aaron, I didn't know. Aaron, I'm not sure what grade you're with, but if you'd like to talk, love to hear more about that. Okay, no need. Just if you want to just listen, that's more than okay. I'm going to. Oh, and someone else said about fraud in the mobile channel. So Julie wants to know a little bit about that. Julie Esser is with us, who longtime friend. She worked at CUNA, and now she is at CU Ledger, which is a digital identity piece, which is going to make a big deal, and really is becoming more and more important as we work through this. I'd also like to welcome my good friend and co-host on my podcast, Glenn Sarvati. And I'm going to let Glenn give us an update in just a bit from Atlanta. I know he's got the pulse down there. He used to work for the Fed. And also I want to hear a little bit from Glenn about the recent legislation and actually Kevin Sarber. So we'll and Kirk probably to get a little information on that. But before I do, I just want to make sure any Crayons that want to speak can. And I know Gary's always got good information. I saw him on earlier. Hopefully he's still here. And he was actually going to run a report for me. I don't know if he's gotten it done yet, but Gary, are you still here? Yep, looks like he is. He might just be watching though, or I don't know if he's one of these phone calls. You're muted if you are talking, Gary, if you've dialed in via your phone. All right, so I'll move on and we can come back to Gary. Glenn Sarvati, would you mind just catching us up a little bit on kind of what's going on in Atlanta and what you know? I know you're kind of keeping your eye on the news. Man, I'm like not having any luck. Let me see if I can find him here. All right, since we don't got Glenn, I'm going to switch back over to Kirk Kordoleski. Kirk, can you talk a little bit about the legislation and the stuff that's going through, especially for Crayons that have commercial, and what we might see happening there, and what your perspective is?
Yeah, sure. And, you know, I'm not as, I'll say up front that I'm not probably any more informed on the legislation stuff as far as how it affects NCUA and credit unions than anyone else. I'm reading the material as it comes about. As far as the broader stimulus package and commercial loans, you know, one of the things that we saw in 9/11 and prior crises here in New York is that commercial loans are particularly vulnerable in down cycles and have to be watched very carefully. And in this one, because they're tenants that typically pay for the strip malls or the retail sites in New York City, their tenants tend to be small businesses that are restaurants and bars and other operations that are, you know, heavily reliant on customer business and staying afloat and are always cash at hand is always important to them. So that becomes a risk, and the typical answer to that is to extend in those situations, trying to get through the period back to an economic condition, more positive economic conditions. So I think commercial lending and has to be watched carefully early in the cycle. As far as the stimulus package goes, you know, what we know so far is that the options on the SBA lending appears to be strong. What I don't know, and I'd love to hear from the group a bit, is if there has been any clarity provided about how quickly the loans will be processed. I think that's so crucial to the storyline, is that the small businesses are going to need money fast in order to pay people, A, and B, to pay their mortgages and rents. I did like what was in the stimulus process, that only 60% of the money was absolutely required for payroll. I thought it was essential that they put dollars aside to be able to pay mortgages and utilities and buy supplies that would keep the business open. So, John, I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that's kind of what I've seen so far.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And it looks like Gary is talking, but if he tells me his number here, I'll unmute him. I think, anybody remember the area code for Oregon? 601? Does that sound right? Let's do it. Let's just see. Gary, is that you? 503, that's done. Okay. So he said he's dialed in on his phone, but I do not see his number here. So
503, John.
Yep, you're right. I'm not seeing it. Well, I'm going to jump over to Tom here, Tom from Aspire. Tom, I know in the last meeting you talked about staying close with your league and the fact that they were speaking to the senators and whatnot. Do you have any input or information on what Kirk just discussed?
There we go. So we are trying to run that down now. As Kirk said, we know as much as anyone else. And quite frankly, until it's all signed off, we don't know what changes may be made at the last minute. You know, it's a sausage making process down in Washington. They're trying to figure out how to get a quorum to actually vote on this thing. But I do get information from the SBA on going towards that point about some of the loans. And what they do is they talk about SBA Express. So if there's an SBA lender that is approved for their Express program, that they'll be able to process these new loans under that rubric or under that scheme. But they do talk about potentially 45 to 90 days to get that done. So even the Express is not really seems to be not all that Express. I'm just reading through some of it now as we talk. What we're doing for our small businesses, which are taxi medallions, is we're deferring payments for April and May. So that'll buy us all time for it. But from the credit union standpoint, it's a crazy hardship because most of these are troubled debt, which are non-accrual loans. So for the vast majority of this portfolio, we won't be able to accrue any income if we aren't receiving any payments. So it becomes a massive hardship and a significant loss. So we're also looking to see what the credit union and our CUSO can gain from some of these grants and forgivable loans and all. But it's still, everything is still up in the air at this point. We've put calls out to the state league our cross-state. We have contact with CUNA. We're talking with NACUSO so that we can get all these various experts to study this and let us know what the options might be.
Got it.
It's 14 pages of legislation. So it's going to take somebody a
So,
little.
but you know, you're trapped. You got plenty of time to read it.
Yeah, it's true.
What else you gonna do?
Right.
Plus, if you print it and you're still out of toilet paper, I won't go there. But Doug, do you guys have any input or insight on that, given what you've been doing?
I'm sorry, I was unmuting. Say that again, John.
Do you guys have any insight on the lending and the current legislation that you guys have been hearing through the Colorado channels?
No, I would have to refer to our compliance team, but no, we don't really get into the lending side that much.
Okay, I just didn't know. I know you've been watching the news and everything else for everyone. So let me kick it over to Kevin. I know Kevin has been keeping an eye on this. Kevin Sarber, who is the president of BIG and a former SVP at Westcomb Credit Union and has run a lot of call centers, a lot of other things, a lot of valuable experience. Kevin, anything you want to add or just kind of thinking about?
Just a couple quick things. You know, I think we've touched really lightly on security, but you know, I've seen a lot of issues around, you know, folks who are working remotely for the first time. You know, my wife even got a very well done phishing email yesterday that looked like it was from AT&T, and that they were soliciting providing more bandwidth, and click here.
Oh wow, that would definitely catch people.
Yeah, and it was pretty well done. So it didn't have the typical spelling errors and formatting issues. It looked pretty good. So, you know, and I know that Julie was asking about fraud, and there's probably some folks who've had a lot of fraudulent activity. And John, I think even you mentioned that you've been experiencing, particularly since your post about the 3D printing went viral, that you've been seeing increased activity.
Oh yeah,
So.
no, I got attacked pretty quickly by the Russians. I have a lab and a lot of security here, and that's why I was offering for remote worker testing is, you know, figuring out bandwidth. There are things you just can't figure out with the person on the other end of the phone. It's not technical. So that's what we're hoping we can help with, and maybe that'll be a good business for you and good business for us. But absolutely, we're seeing those attacks because just like we're locked in, the hackers are locked in. And now they've got lots of time on their hands. So, and now they're starting to use AI. And so that means that they don't have to go one at a time. And the AI can spell check and do all kinds of stuff. So we had a credit union that was my friend Kevin Wright, who's part of our innovation club, who got it, who let us know that he was constantly being attacked and several other credit unions in Florida, in Vietnam. So what are you going to do? It's definitely kind of part of the business, but the mobile is an area we're really going to have to touch. And now that we're doing so much more with digital, it gets even harder to know who you're talking to. So real quick, Kevin, I wanted to get your thought on this. I liked what Jonathan said about getting people to do work that's normally cleanup that you wouldn't have because there's some time on their hands sometimes. One of the things I know is a huge problem for most Symitar credit unions and many credit unions is that the joints and the primaries are mixed in to use mobile and home banking. Maybe now would be a good time to start digging that out, because I think a lot of people have tried to run jobs to do that. It hasn't really worked. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? If I was looking for busy work, that'd be a big one for me.
Yeah, I think, well, and I'm sure there's long lists of things to do with spare time, but I think that's definitely one of them. You know, trying to clean up the database and trying to separate out as much as you can is really helpful. That's something, you know. And one of the other things I think that we touched on real briefly earlier, I think a real opportunity for credit unions is to really take a look at your remote deposit limits and availability of those deposits made through remote deposit. I don't think there could be a better product that fits what we're going through right now than something that allows you to do business from home, and not have to leave the house, not have to be in line with anybody, not have to worry about getting pulled over or anything else. So I think, remote deposit is a real opportunity for us, but we have to make sure it's a friendly way for the members to be able to use it. And hopefully that'll be the case.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of deposits, Gary, I think I got him unmuted. Gary?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I found it.
Yeah, cool.
You're coming from 1971, so you know.
Huh? Yeah, it's my work cell. Sorry.
No
the
worries.
other area code's 502. So we ran the direct deposit report that we talked about at one of the first of these town halls, and there were not a lot of members that were on there. There was a few hundred. They're all ACH transfers though, so we can't tell for absolute sure that they're all direct deposits, but we can apply some logic based on the amounts and stuff to try and determine. So our marketing team right now is working on a communication to reach out to those members that we think may have been affected, and it may be too early. So we're going to continue to run the report and continue to work it as we go through this thing.
So give everybody a quick status or a quick rundown of what the report is exactly, because some people weren't here in that meeting.
Okay,
like Jonathan,
so,
I can see him like looking intently.
What we're looking at is the ACH transfers for direct deposits, and looking at last month versus this month. And so if they had a direct deposit last month and it has stopped this month, they may be affected by the being laid off or not working. So we want to proactively reach out to them to offer them help. We have
and you didn't have this report before, right, Gary? So now you have a baseline.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the data. The data's always been there. We just haven't looked at it from this purpose. Now we have a purpose, so we're looking at it.
I'm sorry,
and
I
I'll let you know
interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, once we get the communication, hopefully I'll be able to share that with you for marketing of how we're reaching out, and then also down the road, hopefully be able to report some results on how our interactions with the members go.
Yeah, and if anybody wants that report and is on Scimitar or something, we can absolutely do that here at Big. We'd be happy to help you write that up. Like I said, I got lots of people who are looking for some work. So if you got stuff like that, we can knock it out.
Yeah, we can help too if anybody needs help.
So Gary, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
On the other comment I wanted to make was someone had talked about the drive-through and the backups and long lines and what different credit unions were doing. We've actually hired some security that are actually doing two things: making sure that things are secure and directing the traffic in the drive-through. The first few days there were long lines. It's calmed down since then, so I'm curious if other credit unions are also seeing their drive-ups calm down, or if they're continuing to have really long lines.
Yeah, that'd be a great thing to put in the chat. So let everybody know. And I'm still curious. Robert mentioned it about the large withdrawals. Like, Jonathan, are you seeing people hoard money? I don't know what they would do with it, but it's an interesting question to me because we were seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen a whole lot of that. I will say that we have increased our cash on hand at branches in the anticipation that might eventually happen or may start to happen, basically up to the limits of which our insurance coverage will allow us to do it. So that certainly was a consideration at the outset. Honestly, I don't think we've had really any run on people coming in to withdraw hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I will say that when the stock market started to really tank last week, we did see a rush into our branches of people saying, you know, I'm going to take my cash out. And, you know, it's almost, you know, we equated it to almost this mentality of like, okay, we're going to take our money and stuff it under a mattress now because we think, you know, things are becoming unsafe and unsound. You know, thankfully that didn't turn into something more significant. But when the markets first started to really go down and the trading was being suspended, you know, day after day, we did see people coming in to withdraw larger sums of money than they normally would. But to this point, we haven't had any situation in a branch where they just have not been able to handle the number of withdrawals that they're being asked to do on a given day. And you know, knock on wood, hopefully, at this point at least, people have started to adjust to maybe what this new normal may look like for a while, and are a little less jittery. And you know, our thing too is, in times like these, we also make a point to remind our members that, you know, up to $250,000, your deposits are insured. So, you know, your money's safe. Your money's not going anywhere. You don't need to worry about it. And so it's you know, for us, it's important to really start that messaging campaign anytime we see these types of events happen, because we do have members that immediately jump to the conclusion, oh, the credit union's not going to be here tomorrow. That's really not true. And I think, you know, I was thinking about this as some of the other comments were being made. You know, I will say that in order to make sure that we are able to sustain this environment, and I imagine a lot of other organizations, but I wanted to throw it out there, are doing this, is, you know, we are also taking a very, very close look at all of the projects we were anticipating on doing this year. And now we've had to adjust to this new scenario, and we're cutting back on our budgets for all of those types of projects that were nice to haves or weren't 100% necessary, so that we can refocus those funds and that capital into areas that we now have to make sure we adjust to as part of this pandemic crisis that we find ourselves in. So that's certainly a new way of reality for the management team here, is, you know, really taking a very critical look at our budgets and saying, what are we doing that has to be done, and what can we not do this year, so we can refocus those funds on initiatives that we now need to do to keep our members whole and the business whole. So, you know, that's something else that's absolutely going on as well. It's, you know, there's a hardship for us too, and part of that hardship is really reallocating funds and not doing things that we had anticipated on doing this year that otherwise we would have been able to.
Yeah, like SecureLink, you wouldn't have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a question from Robert, discussion of raising insurance limits. Maybe just put that in the chat. I wanted to just check in before we go with Mike. Mike, you've been interviewing just nonstop. I know you must have come across some important subjects and things like that. Just wanted to let you chime in.
Yeah, we've had lots of interesting conversations, and I was actually on another town hall yesterday put on by the folks at BankJoy with Mike Duncan, and they were talking a lot about fraud. And there was an extreme case where somebody was talking about how 3 people in hazmat suits approached this lady and said, "Hey, can we come inside your house and de-virus your computer?" I mean, this is the lengths that people are going to now to fraud people. Obviously, the lady didn't go for it, but I mean, that's a pretty extreme length to go.
Scary.
Like that. Yeah, and like you said, yeah, extremely scary. But yeah, all the things that people were talking about today is what I've been hearing about as well. And even like I spoke with Jill Nowacki yesterday, who's with Humanity, and they're obviously recruiting CEOs and how that whole thing is going to change, recruiting and searching for people. I mean, just people interviewing for jobs now and recruiting CEOs and executives and things like that. That whole industry is going to be changing. Just stuff that you're not thinking about on a day-to-day basis. Oh my gosh, how is this going to change? I mean, on the backside of this, how is life going to change for us, especially in the financial services industry. So yeah, just lots of interesting things like that. But yeah, a lot of what I've been talking to other people about are truly echoed right here, what we've been talking about here. So this is, I mean, and I've heard nothing but good things about what you're doing here, John. So thank you very much for giving
Oh, no,
platform. This is awesome.
No, I appreciate it. I think that Jonathan put it best. This is a new normal,
Yeah.
and we have to adjust to a new normal. Okay.
Hey,
Well, with
John.
that in mind, what's that?
Hey, John, it's Kevin. I just
Hey,
wanted
Kevin.
to finish up comments. When
Oh, sorry.
You know, I know that Doug is going to sending some kind of slide-based town hall ideas. But one of the unique things I think in that deck, and I know it's local to us here in Southern California, where we're being hit pretty hard. Credit Union of Southern California, Dave Gunderson's credit union, is doing something that I thought was unique. They're paying every employee, whether they be full-time, part-time, whatever, $1,000 bonus, just for their, you know, they're dealing with members face-to-face or not face-to-face if there's a shield in front of them, but
Like combat pay.
yeah, it's basically combat pay. And even though they're committed to keeping their staff employed, they also said, you know, most of our staff is married or in a relationship, so there may be other income that's not coming in as a result of this, and we want to make sure our staff is taken care of and show our appreciation for them. And so I thought it was a unique benefit. That's something that you know, if it became more prevalent, would be good for all the staff of credit unions around the country.
Well, you know, you make another valid point around that, Kevin, too, that at some point, you know, is it worth it for a teller's pay to go risk literally my life to be in front of people?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, we've talked about healthcare workers, and I definitely don't want to downplay any of that, but healthcare workers, first responders, but a lot of credit unions are unfortunately having to put staff in danger to be able to serve the members. And so
just driving to the branch, stopping in gas.
Yeah.
But you know, you got it's yeah, but it's an incredible thing. Thank you for sharing that. So if you're building a new branch now, would you build a pandemic branch, is what Mike's asking?
Yeah, well, I saw stories about how Target and some other companies or some other retailers are building plexiglass walls in between the cashiers and the customers. So that's another extreme case that's happening right now. So that leads me to believe, are we going to be redesigning branches now to include plexiglass and all these other things to keep germs from going back and forth, I guess? So
I don't know. Yeah, and that's the hard part about all this, is not to overreact, but at the same time to fall, but not to underreact. I think that's really the balancing act that everybody's trying to do. It's tough. It's so hard to even consider. Kevin, did you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to close it out real fast. I just want to share something with you. For those of you who have not been to the website lately, in our CU Digital Town Hall page, and I'm battling it for you, here are the recordings from before, and occasionally I've been able to get time to do a synopsis, so those are here. There's another one down here for the first week. Also down here is, so far, our pandemic response survey results. Completely free, no email, nothing you have to put in. You just click it and download it. We also will be sending all of you a follow-up email that will ask more questions. We hope you'll fill that out because it helps us to provide more information. And then finally, yeah, those projects that Jonathan was talking about, that's a lot of what BIG does. But we have incredible people here who have been in the industry for a long time. So if you need some help, please, please, please give us a shout. You know, we've done a lot of things for a lot of folks, and we want to be part of the solution here. And we're thankful for, you know, the safety that we've heard from everyone, and that everyone is healthy. We hope that continues. We'll continue these next week, and we'll keep doing them until they're not worth doing anymore. So I hope you found value in it. When we send you the survey, you'll get a chance to tell us that. And if there's a better way to do this, we're all for it. I'm going to give Doug the last word, our sponsor, and then we'll close it out.
Thanks, John. Well, first I want to thank John. You've done a great job. We really appreciate all the hard work that you've put behind the town halls, you know, being the spokesperson, getting all the information out there. So appreciate that.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
I think there's been some tremendous, you know, sharing going on. We've shared some information. I know that Mike, you've been putting a lot of content out there, and I guess I just finished saying, continue to share. We're not done. You know, we're not out of the woods yet. So I think it's a collaborative and community event that we're all having to work together, and we continue to do that. So that's what I would finish with.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Be safe, be well. Hopefully enjoy your lockdown weekend, and let us know, like I said, even on the weekends, be happy to, you know, most everyone knows where to find me. And if you want to help me out, now I'm being attacked on Twitter for being a glory hound on whatever, because I posted something at 3 a.m. So if you want to come to my defense from the Russian bots, you can help by going to my Twitter account and saying, maybe I'm not that guy. So, but I don't really care that much. But yeah, if you haven't gotten involved with your local PPE, Mass for Docs is where you can go. If you guys happen to have 3D printers and maybe your staff does, it's a huge help. Even if you can only print like 6 a day, they can only wear these things so many times. And so, and they're going through them like crazy. I have some friends whose kids are nurses here, and that's what got me into it. So, I mean, I just had it lying around. So anyways, whatever we can do to help, we are going to pull together. Thanks again.
Always good content.
Take care, guys.
Thank you all.